The bright studio lights blazed down on Sandra Mitchell as she sat frozen in her chair, her face white as paper. The famous TV host who never lost her words was now speechless, staring at the man walking toward her with a smile that could buy entire cities. Her hands shook as she gripped the armrests of her chair, and then, everything went black. Sandra Mitchell, the woman who had destroyed Marcus Thompson on live television 5 years ago, had just fainted in front of 12 million viewers. But how did we get here? How did the poor janitor she once humiliated become the man who just made her collapse with shock? Let me take you back to where it all began. 5 years earlier, Marcus Thompson was nobody special in the eyes of most people. He was 28 years old, working as a night janitor at Channel 7 News, the biggest TV station in Chicago. Every night, he would clean the fancy offices, empty the trash cans, and mop the floors while the important people went home to their big houses. Marcus had dreams though. Big dreams. In his small apartment, he spent hours working on something that would change everything. A computer program that could predict what people wanted to buy before they even knew it themselves. He called it MindLink, and he believed it would make shopping easier for everyone in the world. But dreams don't pay the bills. Marcus lived in a tiny one-room apartment where the heat barely worked in winter. He ate cheap noodles for dinner most nights and wore the same 3 shirts to work. His shoes had holes that he covered with tape. Still, he never gave up on his dream. At Channel 7, nobody really noticed Marcus. He was just the quiet guy who cleaned up after everyone left. But Marcus noticed everything. He watched how the TV people acted, how they talked, and how they treated others. Most were nice enough, but some looked at him like he was invisible. Sandra Mitchell was different though, she was mean. Sandra was the star of Chicago Morning Live, the most popular morning show in the city. She was beautiful, smart, and rich. Everyone loved watching her interview famous people and talk about the news. She wore expensive clothes, drove a fancy red car, and lived in a huge house by the lake. But Sandra had a cruel side that most people never saw. She treated the workers at the TV station like they were beneath her. She never said thank you when Marcus cleaned her office. She would drop trash on the floor right after he cleaned it just because she could. When other workers tried to talk to her, she would act like they weren't worth her time. Marcus tried to stay out of her way, but Sandra seemed to enjoy making his job harder. She would spill coffee on purpose and then complain that he wasn't fast enough to clean it up. She called him the janitor boy, even though he had a name tag that clearly said Marcus. One cold Tuesday morning in December, everything changed forever. Marcus was cleaning the hallway outside the main studio when he overheard Sandra talking to her assistant, Jenny. They were discussing the morning show, and Sandra was complaining about not having any good guests. "The show is getting boring," Sandra said, checking her makeup in a small mirror. "We need something different. Something that will get people talking." Marcus took a deep breath and walked up to them. His heart was beating fast, but he had an idea that might help. "Excuse me, Miss Mitchell," Marcus said politely. "I couldn't help but hear you talking about the show. I have an idea that might interest your viewers." Sandra looked at him like he had just spoken in a foreign language. Jenny took a step back, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, what?" Sandra said, her voice sharp and cold. "I've been working on something," Marcus continued, his voice getting stronger. "It's a computer program that can predict what people want to buy. I think your viewers would find it really interesting. Maybe I could come on the show and talk about it." For a moment, Sandra just stared at him. Then she started to laugh. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made Marcus feel small and stupid. "Are you serious right now?" Sandra said, loud enough for other people in the hallway to hear. "You want to be on my show? You're a janitor." More people started to gather around, including some of the camera crew and other hosts. Marcus felt his face getting hot with embarrassment, but he didn't back down. "I know I'm just a janitor," Marcus said quietly, "but this program could really help people. I've been working on it for 3 years and I think it could change how everyone shops online." Sandra's laugh got even louder. "Oh, this is rich. The janitor thinks he's invented something important. She turned to the growing crowd around them. Can you believe this? He wants to be on television talking about some computer thing he made in his little apartment. The crowd was getting bigger now. Some people looked uncomfortable, but others were starting to whisper and point. Marcus felt like everyone in the building was staring at him. Look at yourself, Sandra continued, her voice getting meaner. You can't even afford decent clothes or shoes without holes in them. What makes you think you have anything valuable to say to successful people? Marcus looked down at his taped shoes and felt his heart breaking. But Sandra wasn't done yet. You clean toilets for a living, she said, her voice carrying down the hall. You empty our trash and mop our floors. That's your job. That's all you're good for. Don't get ideas above your station. The words hit Marcus like physical punches. He had worked so hard on his program. He had spent every free moment for 3 years writing code, testing ideas, and dreaming of a better future. And now the person he had hoped might help him was destroying those dreams in front of everyone. I'm sorry, Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean to bother you. But Sandra still wasn't finished. She was enjoying the attention, the way everyone was watching her put this nobody in his place. You know what? Sandra said, a cruel smile spreading across her face. This is actually perfect for the show. Not as a guest, as a joke. We can talk about how some people have such silly dreams that they don't know their place in the world. She turned to Jenny. Make a note. Tomorrow's show, we'll do a segment about people who think they're more important than they really are. We'll call it Know Your Place. And our janitor here will be our perfect example. Marcus felt the world spinning around him. Please don't do that, he said, his voice shaking. Please. Oh, but I will, Sandra said with glee. And every morning when you clean my office, you'll remember that this is where you belong. Cleaning up after your betters. The crowd started to break up as people went back to their work, but they were all whispering and looking at Marcus with pity or amusement. He stood there for a long moment, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. That night, Marcus barely slept. He knew that tomorrow morning, Sandra Mitchell would tell the whole city about the stupid janitor who thought he was smart enough to be on TV. His coworkers would laugh at him. His neighbors might see it. Everyone would know how foolish he had been to think he could be more than just a person who cleaned floors. But as Marcus sat in his small apartment, looking at his computer screen showing the MindLink program he had worked so hard on, something changed inside him. The sadness turned into something else, determination. Sandra Mitchell had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had humiliated the wrong person. Because Marcus Thompson wasn't just a janitor with silly dreams. He was a genius who was about to change the world. And when he did, Sandra Mitchell would be the one who looked foolish. But first, he had to survive tomorrow morning's show, where Sandra planned to destroy him in front of the entire city. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work early, hoping maybe Sandra had forgotten about her cruel plan. But as he walked past the studio, he could see the crew setting up cameras and lights. His stomach dropped when he saw a big sign that read, Know Your Place, hanging behind Sandra's desk. At exactly 8 a.m., Chicago Morning Live went on the air. Sandra looked perfect as always in her bright blue dress and shiny jewelry. She smiled her famous smile at the camera. Good morning, Chicago, Sandra said cheerfully. Today we have a very special segment about people who forget where they belong in life. Sometimes people get such big dreams that they lose touch with reality. Marcus was watching from the hallway, his hands shaking. He wanted to run away, but his feet felt like they were stuck to the floor. Yesterday, something hilarious happened here at the station, Sandra continued, her smile getting bigger. Our night janitor, yes, the man who cleans our toilets, actually asked to be a guest on our show. He thinks he invented something important on his computer. The studio audience started to giggle. Sandra was loving every second of it. Now, I don't want to be mean, Sandra said, even though that's exactly what she was doing, but this man cleans floors for a living. He wears shoes with tape on them and eats cheap noodles for dinner. But somehow he thinks he's smart enough to teach successful people about business. The audience laughed louder now. Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes, but he couldn't look away. The funniest part, Sandra said, is that he was completely serious. He really thought I would put him on television to talk about his little computer program. Can you imagine? A janitor giving advice to people who actually matter. Sandra held up a photo that someone had taken of Marcus the day before, looking embarrassed and small. This is what delusion looks like, people. When you don't know your place in the world, you end up looking foolish like this. The laughter from the audience felt like knives in Marcus's heart. But Sandra still wasn't done. So let this be a lesson to everyone watching, Sandra said, looking directly into the camera. Dream big, but dream realistically. If you're a janitor, be proud of being a janitor. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Know your place and stay in it. Marcus turned away from the screen and walked out of the building. He couldn't take any more. As he left, he could still hear Sandra's voice echoing through the halls, and the sound of people laughing at his dreams. That day changed everything for Marcus Thompson. He quit his job at Channel 7 that afternoon, leaving a simple note that said, "I resign." He used every penny of his savings to buy better computer equipment and locked himself in his apartment. For the next 6 months, he worked on MindLink 18 hours a day, surviving on nothing but determination and cheap coffee. The program was brilliant, even more brilliant than Marcus had dared to hope. MindLink could look at what someone bought online and predict what they would want next with incredible accuracy. It made shopping faster, easier, and more personal than ever before. But Marcus was still just one person with no money and no connections. Big companies wouldn't even answer his emails. For 2 years he was rejected by everyone he contacted. He lived on savings, then borrowed money, then sold everything he owned just to keep working on his dream. Just when Marcus was about to give up, everything changed in one incredible day. A small startup company in California was desperate for a solution to their customer prediction problem. They were about to go out of business when someone found Marcus's program online. They tested MindLink and couldn't believe how well it worked. Within 3 months, that small company grew into a billion-dollar business using Marcus's program. Within 6 months, every major company in America wanted to license MindLink. Within a year, Marcus Thompson was worth more money than he could count. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with just being rich. He wanted to change the world. He used his billions to start Thompson Technologies, a company that created programs to help people shop, learn, and connect with each other. He bought smaller companies, hired the smartest people he could find, and kept inventing new things that made life better for millions of people. Marcus became one of the youngest billionaires in American history. His face was on magazine covers. Presidents asked for his advice. Universities gave him awards. The whole world knew his name. But through it all, Marcus never forgot Sandra Mitchell and the day she tried to destroy him on live television. Now, 5 years after that terrible morning, Marcus was ready to face her again. Thompson Technologies had grown so big that Marcus decided to announce his newest invention on live television. He wanted to reach as many people as possible to tell them about MindLink 2.0, a program that would revolutionize online shopping forever. Marcus's assistant suggested he go on the biggest morning shows in the country. At the top of the list was Chicago Morning Live, with Sandra Mitchell, still the most popular morning show in Chicago. "Are you sure you want to do this, sir?" asked James, Marcus's personal assistant. "There are other shows that would love to have you." Marcus smiled as he looked at Sandra's photo on the TV schedule. "Oh, I'm very sure, James. This is exactly where I want to be." Sandra had no idea who she was interviewing when her producers told her about the special guest. They just said he was Marcus Thompson, CEO of Thompson Technologies, one of the richest men in America. Sandra was excited. Having a billionaire on her show would be great for ratings. The morning of the interview, Marcus put on his most expensive suit and his solid gold watch. He looked in the mirror and saw a completely different person from the scared janitor who had been humiliated 5 years ago. But inside he still remembered every word Sandra had said. Marcus arrived at Channel 7 in a limousine longer than a school bus. The same hallway where Sandra had destroyed him was now filled with people excited to meet him. The same studio where she had mocked his dreams was now decorated with flowers and special lights just for him. Sandra was in her dressing room, preparing for what she thought would be just another interview with just another rich businessman. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. At exactly 8 a.m., Sandra walked onto the set with her biggest smile. "Good morning, Chicago. Today we have a very special guest. Marcus Thompson, the brilliant CEO of Thompson Technologies and one of the youngest billionaires in the world." The audience applauded loudly as Marcus walked onto the set. Sandra still didn't recognize him. The confident, well-dressed billionaire looked nothing like the poor janitor she remembered. "Welcome to the show, Mr. Thompson," Sandra said, shaking his hand. "We're so honored to have you here." "Thank you, Sandra," Marcus said, looking directly into her eyes. "It's been a long time." Something in his voice made Sandra pause. There was something familiar about it, but she couldn't quite place it. "Have we met before?" Sandra asked, tilting her head. Marcus smiled, the same smile that had been buying cities and changing the world. "Oh yes, Sandra. We've definitely met before. In fact, you know me very well." The studio was completely quiet now. Even the camera operators stopped moving. "5 years ago," Marcus continued, "you did a show called Know Your Place. You showed a picture of a man you said was delusional for thinking he could be more than a janitor. Do you remember that show, Sandra?" Sandra's face started to go pale. Deep in her mind, a terrible memory was starting to surface. "You told that man he should be proud of cleaning toilets and emptying trash," Marcus said, his voice getting stronger. "You said he should know his place and stay in it. You told the whole city that he was foolish for having big dreams." Sandra's hands started to shake. The memory was getting clearer now. The poor janitor who had asked to be on her show, the way she had humiliated him in front of everyone. "That man was me, Sandra," Marcus said, standing up from his chair. "I was your janitor. I was the one you destroyed on live television for daring to believe I could be more than you thought I was worth." The studio audience gasped. Sandra's mouth fell open as the truth hit her like a truck. You're? Sandra stammered, unable to form complete words. "I'm the janitor with holes in his shoes," Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the studio. "I'm the man who you said cleans toilets for a living. I'm the person you told to know his place." Marcus gestured around the studio, at the cameras, at the audience, at the whole world that was watching. "Well, Sandra, I found my place," Marcus said with a smile that could light up the city. "And my place is at the top of the world." The shock was too much for Sandra Mitchell. The woman who had spent years putting other people down, who had built her career on making others feel small, was face to face with the biggest mistake of her life. Her eyes rolled back, her knees buckled, and Sandra Mitchell, the famous host who never lost her words, collapsed in her chair and fainted dead away on live television in front of 12 million viewers. The same woman who had once told Marcus Thompson to know his place had just learned that sometimes, the people you look down on are actually looking down on you from heights you can't even imagine. Marcus Thompson had gotten the last laugh and the whole world was watching.